This only happened about an hour ago, and I'm still shaking. Before I tell you what happened, I'll give you a bit of background. I live in Sydney, Australia, in a pretty dodgy neighborhood, so I'm quite used to creepy and not so very nice people. But this experience is the worst I've ever had. My house backs onto a park with quite a few trees, but they are spaced out so it's not like bushland. It's a nice park with a walkway, and all the houses in my street line up against it and make a sort of long wall of house backyard fences, if that makes sense. Because of this, I have a very small backyard. I was just about to go to bed, and had finished locking my front door and the windows. All I had to do was lock the back door. But before I did, I decided to open it and have a look outside, just to check the weather, and to see if my 2 cats were out there lying around. I was having a look around, when a faint flicker from one of the treetops caught my eye. It was weird, considering there are no lights in the park, and I got worried that there might be a fire starting. I decided to take a closer look, but as soon as I stepped outside, the clearly visible flame vanished. The flame had come from the tree closest to my back fence, only a few feet away, so it was possible to see shapes and movement in the darkness. I was certain it was from a lighter. Someone had climbed up that tree and was either lighting a smoke or trying to start a fire. This scared the living shit out of me, because if he was lighting a cigarette, that meant he was spying on all the houses and had just seen me in my pajamas. And if he was starting a fire, the whole park would go up in flames, and the houses too. Australia in the summer can be very dangerous, and bushfires damage homes, wildlife, and nature, and kill many people. I ran inside and slammed the door. My father then yelled at me for making so much noise and waking him up. I apologized, but didn't tell him what was going on, just in case I was being overly paranoid. I do have severe anxiety. I continued to stand with the back door shut and locked, but watched to see what the man was doing. I saw the lighter once more, and then the end of a cigarette light up. He was smoking. I could now see my cat was staring at him too, and her fur was all puffed up, and after reading posts like this, I didn't want him to hurt her. Along with the fact that in my area, many animals and humans are killed and harmed by people whacked out on drugs, in gangs, or just stupid teens trying to have fun and hurting innocent animals. So I decided to go outside and get her. I ran out and picked up my cat. As I was almost inside, I turned around to see what the man was doing. I could see the whites of his eyes. He was staring right at me. I froze for a moment, and then started to go back into the house quickly and quietly. But before I could even get my body halfway through the door, the man lunged out of the tree and onto my back fence. He threw his cigarette at my other cat, who had now climbed out of the flower pot and was hissing. He missed, and my cat is fine. I ran inside and locked the door. The man proceeded to jump into my backyard and bolt for my cat. Luckily, my cat ran through the cat door, and my other cat was still in my arms. I put a large heavy box in front of the cat door to block it. I had once again woken up my dad by being so noisy. He came out yelling at me and telling me to go to my fucking room and shut up, as he had to go to work early in the morning. I softly apologized, as all I could manage was a small squeak from being so scared, and I didn't want to piss him off further. I told him to look out back, but not to open the door. He looked at me like I was insane, probably thinking there was some kind of small rodent outside that had frightened me or attacked the cats. He made an annoyed groan and went to have a look. As soon as he looked outside, he froze. Without even looking at me, he told me to call the police and to see if I could get my neighbors, one being a cop and the other being a terrifyingly large Fijian man who could kill someone with his bare hands. I called the cops whilst sprinting to my neighbors' houses and telling them what was happening. When I came back, my dad was yelling at the guy and telling him to get the fuck out of there before the cops come, or my dad decides to kill him himself. Now, just some quick info. My dad is a scary man. Tall, muscular, and ex-army. Nobody fucks with him. But this guy, this insane man, just stared at him and slowly pulled a knife from his boot and started cutting my screen door, making a hole and trying to get through. My screen door has bars on it, and the man could not fit through them. Yet there he was, half his body through the hole, trapped by the bars, trying to open the glass sliding door, yelling at my father about how he'd never see me again, and the awful things him and his friends would do to me. By this point, one of the neighbors, the cop, had gone into the park with his large German Shepherd and taser, and was planning on jumping over the fence and ambushing the guy. Just as he was about to do this, the police I called for arrived and barged past my father, myself, and my other neighbor, the large Fijian man. They then proceeded to tell the man to step away from the door and to drop his knife. The man turned away and tried to bolt, but before he could, my neighbor's dog tackled him to the ground and bit him, allowing the cops to arrest the guy. They put him in the car, but he just kept staring at me the whole time, never taking his eyes off of me. I felt so violated and vulnerable. They took our statements, and that's all that happened. He's in police custody, and we're waiting to see what will happen next. My dad told me that when he looked outside the first time, he saw the man trying to look through our windows with his pants on the ground. He could have possibly been taking a whiz, or, well, the other obvious thing. I was, and still am, very shaken up by this event, and have gone to stay with my aunt for the night, so I don't have to be in my house. This happened 3 years ago. I'm 17 now. My parents are divorced, and on weekends I'm usually at my dad's, while my sister stays at my mom's. My dad lives in a 3-bedroom scrambler-style house, with the kitchen, bedrooms, bathroom, and living room all on the same floor. My bedroom, my dad's bedroom, my sister's bedroom, and the bathroom are all connected to a square-shaped hallway. One night, I was up at around 11 p.m. sitting on my phone when I glanced out my bedroom window and saw a car stop at the house across the street. After the car stopped, I saw somebody get out of the car, run to the door, went inside, and came back to the car like 3 minutes later and drove away. I thought they were probably delivering something, or knew the people at the house, but I was still creeped out since the house was pitch black with no lights on. After the car drove away, I went back to my phone. I was still sitting on my phone, watching YouTube videos, when I noticed a pair of headlights going down the street. So right away, I instinctively glanced through my blinds. It turned out it was the same car. So I watched it, and noticed it did the same thing again. After I saw them do this twice, I became relieved, since this probably meant they came back to the house to bring the people something. Until I realized it was a different house. I froze, and I watched the person run out of the car, up to the door, try the handle, go to the back of the house, and run back to the car seconds later. I realized at this point, they probably shouldn't be there. This was a house that was directly across from us, and one over. They previously went to the one directly across. I didn't know about calling the cops, because I was telling myself there was nothing to be afraid of, and that it would cause a lot more harm than good. Looking back, if I was a few years older at the time, I wouldn't have hesitated to call. And to this day, I do really regret not calling the police. After the car drove away for the second time, I wanted to wake my dad up, but decided not to since he gets in a bad mood when he's woken up in the middle of the night, like most anybody. He also had to wake up at 4 in the morning to go to work, so I shut my blinds and went back to watching videos. After about 4 or 5 minutes, I ripped my headphones out of my ears when I heard a car engine in front of our house. my body froze for what seemed like an entire minute. It was just me and my dad in the house, and he was asleep. I lost my shit and quietly ran to my dad's room right across the hallway. He wasn't having it, since it was 12 a.m. by now, and he had to work soon. But he became really worried when I told him someone was at our front door. He told me it was one of his buddies, probably stopped by and wanted to have a drink, until I told him what I saw the car previously doing. He usually dismisses stuff like that, but didn't this time, because he could obviously see how worried I was. I asked him if he had locked both doors, and right after I said that I got my answer when he ran to the back door to lock it. As soon as he made it to the door, he flipped the deadbolt, and when he looked up, he almost fell backwards as he saw a man looking directly at him through the glass panel. If I hadn't gotten my dad when I had, that guy would have walked right in and done who knows what. The guy driving the car then got out and walked up to the back door and started trying to break the handle quietly, not attracting attention since it was midnight. Sirens then came down the street, and police saw the car and came up to our house with guns drawn. The two men ran into our backyard, which had a 7-foot-high wooden fence around it. They must have realized they couldn't climb it, so they hid somewhere in the heavy shrubs. The cops then had to call 2 more squad cars to the house. After 2 more cop cars pulled up, and lights flashing, the neighborhood was still surprisingly asleep, except for the houses that the 2 men went into before. An ambulance slowly pulled up to the house across the street from ours. This was the house the men got into. After about 5 minutes, 2 paramedics pulled out an old woman on a stretcher, who was obviously not in good shape, but she was across the street, so I couldn't see what she looked like or what was wrong with her. Meanwhile, I had 5 cops searching our backyard and standing in our patio, making sure the 2 men didn't go anywhere. Eventually, they found the 2 men near a large tree surrounded with shrubs and old bagged leaves that my dad had stored up in our backyard before he throws them away. The men were unarmed. After the cops left and the ambulance cleared, my dad took the day off work because it was almost 1:30 a.m. by that time, and he went back to bed. We both woke up the next morning, and we were both very curious about what had happened, so we called the police department to check out what had happened to our neighbors, and the cops told us they couldn't disclose the information. After waiting about a week, the lady was back in her home. Without me or my dad bringing up a word to the lady, she walked across the street to me and my dad's house and told us what happened. She said she had woken up to her cat hissing and a man holding a large kitchen knife from her kitchen to her chest, almost in a stabbing position. He left her room and came back about a minute later, and she said he brutally beat her half to death. She called the police minutes before passing out, waking back up in an ambulance about 10 minutes later. She told us that they took nothing. It was hard to understand why the cops took so long to get there. It's scary to know that it would have happened to us if I wasn't such a night owl. Every night, I now make sure every door and window is locked at night. If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. If you would like a chance to have your story featured in an upcoming video, make sure you check out the description for information on how to submit your stories. I hope you all have an awesome day, and I'll catch you in the next video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.